Today I'm trying out intimate apparel for yarn cones, otherwise known as yarn bras. This is a little bit different from most as it comes by the yard. And I want to see how it works. I'm going to make this piece a bit long, and in order to determine how long I need it to be, I'm going to try it on the bigger cone. And that is why I'm making it long, because I don't want it to be useful in the future only on little cones. So we pull it over the cone with enough to tuck in the bottom and snip it off about there. If it's in the way, we can always pull it down a little bit. And I want to be able to use this on multiple sizes of cones. So now I'll take this one off and put it on the black cone after I measure it. It turned out to be between 14 and 15 inches long, so I think that's a pretty useful length. I'm just using the original to measure out 3 more. I don't think there's any necessity to be right to the 1/8 of an inch. You saw what we were really doing. Now let's get the cones dressed again. I'm going to experiment with exactly how far up we want to leave this. The point is to control misbehavior of yarns. Typically very slippery ones are treated to this garment, but I don't use a lot of slippery yarns. However, I do very frequently use multiple thin yarns together. And when I do that, they tend to whip around and tangle on each other. So that slows down the knitting a whole bunch, so you have to get stopped, clean up the mess, and start again. So the goal is to see whether this will prevent that misbehavior. The reason I think it might, let me demonstrate while we're on this subject. As you get to knitting fast, each yarn is whipping off the cone. And if you're knitting something plain, you really want to knit fast, reasonably fast anyway, but those whipping loops get larger and larger. And with the cones sitting near each other, as you sometimes have to do, they entangle with one another. If we can stop the whipping from starting down here and make it unwind only from up top, there will be less of a size to the loops it could form. This is my theory. We're going to give it a shot. The reason that I chose to do such a crazy thing is twofold. One, to give this method of yarn control a real challenge, but two, I'm working on a recycled commercial sewing machine table. Now here's a surprise. The cones were clustered on the floor, and feeding through a makeshift guide above them attached to a table. This is actually beside the machine, not behind it or under it, because I didn't have room. So now they're taking a sharp turn to the left, and then they go through the feeder normally. The reason that I chose to do such a crazy thing is twofold. One, to give this method of yarn control a real challenge, but two, I'm working on a recycled commercial sewing machine table. There isn't room there for all 4 of those cones to unwind nicely up to the yarn feeder. They were all run together. So here's what we just knitted. One of the cool things about running multiple yarns is you get interesting color gradations and textures. I really should have done this a stitch size or 2 smaller. It was at stitch size 5, and it's okay because it's just a swatch and it's light. But if I wanted a hat or something, I believe it should have been stitch size 3. However, the yarn bras work great.